It is Monday, November 10th, the morning after Week 10 in the NFL. I'm your host, Jared Smith, ready for another episode. Episode 7 of the morning after. Time flies when you're having fun, guys. And gals, I appreciate everyone joining me for a bit of a change-up today. So if you're noticing you're waking up and you're like, is Jared going live for the morning after? No, I'm not. I am recording this right after the Sunday Night Football episode. Why am I doing that? Well, I have decided to add a product, or I guess a piece of content, to the morning after arsenal, and it is a newsletter. Very excited for the newsletter. It's just called the Morning After Newsletter. Nothing that exciting on the name, but I am going to make that a thing every Monday morning, and in order for that to happen, I need to have the podcast done at a relatively, early time, so I could cut it up and send it out and make it into a newsletter. What is this going to mean in terms of changing of the show? Nothing. It'll be the exact same show, just at a different time. I wanted to do the newsletter. I've seen some people that I like and respect start the newsletter in their respective brands, and I think it's a more concise, efficient way to get your message across. A lot of people don't have time to listen to an hour-long podcast. A lot of people don't want to. They've had enough of me during the week doing other things, and they just want just the facts in a very concise, consolidated fashion. That's what the newsletter is. Please sign up not only for the newsletter, but also subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow all of the social channels, continue to support the podcast, the brand. This thing's got a little momentum in my eyes. I really think I have found my container that I can now pour into. I love the name, The Morning After. Obviously, if you're listening to the show, you've listened to me at some point in the past, or you stumbled onto me from years past, and The Morning After was the first show that I ever did in the gambling space. And you never forget your first. I think the brand fits me very much in what I excel at, which is watching everything, reacting, spinning it forward, and throwing a wager in there for good measure. So that will be the one change in the show going forward. I am going to now add in some kind of actionable element at the end. I don't know what it is every week. For now, it'll probably be a Monday Night Football pick, or maybe a match-in pick, something that's taking place early in the week, where doing the show on a Sunday night and then putting out a newsletter on a Monday morning, I can have something that is in that time frame. Maybe it'll be a look-ahead line for the following week, right, when we get to the postseason in the NFL and college football, and we have these lines that are going to be out for long periods of time. Like, I don't have an exact structure for it yet in my mind, but right now I know we're going to start recording the podcast on Sunday nights late, and then we will drop it on Monday morning early, and the newsletter will accompany that. So, again, please sign up, and hopefully it becomes a thing. I'm really excited for the growth of this brand. I think it's something that I'm going to pour a lot of time and effort into, instead of just bashing my head against the wall, tweeting out picks and nerfies and other stuff. I think this is a more valuable use of my time. So please subscribe and support my endeavor as I try to get this newsletter off the ground. All right, let's move on with the show, because we have a packed show today. So obviously, we'll get to NFL Week 10 reactions. I just watched a snooze fest of a game on Sunday Night Football, I guess, unless you're a Chargers fan. We'll get to some college football updates, not only the college football playoff, another week forward. We can kind of crystallize our projections a little bit, but still a lot of work left to do and some really important games this week to talk about. Also, Heisman predictions. Man, what a crazy weekend for Heisman watch out there, because I really think one quarterback in particular is starting to take the reins here with a pretty crazy comeback and one of the best catches I've ever seen in a college football game. Also, the coaching carousel continues to spin round and round in college football. We'll get to all that as well. Rise and Wine, Morning Glory. Again, that's where we'll put the actionable element in Morning Glory. It'll be the last thing we do every day. I'll give you something to bet on. I don't know what it'll be every week. This week, it's going to be a Monday Night Football prop, so stay tuned for that at the end of the show. But let's start out with the big news of the week in the gambling world, because this was actually, there was frankly two massive stories that broke in the gambling world this week. The first one was on the sportsbook operator side with Penn and ESPN breaking up. And I don't want to say it was a shock. Like, we kind of saw the writing on the wall coming about a year ago. I think it was in February, earlier this year, basically right after the new year, when Penn announced that they had operational levers to pull based off of how the deal was going in their first year, right? They started in right before football season in 2023 is when ESPN Bet became a thing. So they had a whole full year to kind of go through the motions, and football season didn't go well for them in 2023. And then in 2024, it continued to kind of tank. And now you're seeing the end result of it. I think the lesson here, and there is a lesson, right? First of all, the biggest winner was Dave Portnoy, hands down. I mean, I'm not I don't know him personally or really. I'm a huge fan of, I think I respect his work a lot, but, I don't really know him that well. And, I think he's a polarizing figure, but he's definitely the biggest winner in what happened between Penn and ESPN. But the lesson here is sports bettors do not care about branding. They care about betting. You can't just slap an ESPN name on a bad product with very little market share and expect it to succeed. ESPN Bet was very, very late to the party. FanDuel and DraftKings were ready from the jump when PASPA was repealed in 2018. MGM and Caesars were not far behind. Fanatics has gained ground recently because they have a very strong digital footprint. That is something ESPN does not have. And no amount of commercials with Stephen A. Smith are going to change that, especially if he's touting parlays. It was never going to move the needle. It wasn't a terrible product, but it wasn't very special. And they went into the ball game already trailing at halftime. I mean, it really was an uphill battle and, frankly, an unwinnable battle. And I think there was a lot of hubris in the decision as well, on both sides. I think with Penn, right, they tried to get into the sports gambling space with Barstool. It didn't work. You could pack it up and move on. You have all these casino and land-based operations to focus on. But no, they had to pound the pavement once again and drop another $2 billion on ESPN to try to get their name on the product. And that didn't work either. Again, fighting a losing battle. Because I think overall the gambling wave is kind of receding in our country. The affiliate money is dried up. Profit margins are very thin because of the intense regulatory structure and the tax rates. And I think we've kind of reached the Darwinistic stage of sports betting with this business cycle. Only the strong are going to survive, and ESPN Bet really had no chance to succeed. The final point I want to make in this breakup, this is not a referendum on sports gambling in our country. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, well, ESPN, they tried to correlate. I saw one person try to correlate it to the NBA betting scandal. Like, oh, ESPN's trying to pull back. Like, no, this was a business decision. It sounded like it was mutual on both sides. ESPN signed a deal with DraftKings like the next minute, the minute after they announced the breakup, which tells me that the DraftKings negotiation was probably in the works for months, and this was something that they expected to happen. But this is not a referendum on gambling in America. This was a business decision. Penn made a bad business decision. ESPN could not carry a sports betting business. And we will see what the landscape looks like in the next year. The other big sports betting scandal that broke today was Emmanuel Classe. Just an incredible indictment released today. I won't bore you on the details. Some of it's pretty nitty gritty, but for the most part, he looks really guilty. He looks like he took bribes of like $5,000 to intentionally throw the first pitch of certain innings, not a strike, right? You can bet on these micro markets where first pitch ball or strike, you can bet on that. And that's a very easily manipulated market. My thoughts on this are very similar to the thoughts I have on the ESPN and Penn breakup. This is not like legalized gambling is not the issue here. The issue here is a bad actor figured out a way to manipulate the system. And then Emmanuel Classe, who's making like $20 million a year, took a bribe of significantly less than that to rig one pitch of an inning. Did it have an impact on the game? Probably not. But you just can't have this stuff happening. Now, I kind of blame the sports books, frankly, for this. I think they got greedy with the amount of markets that they were offering. Listen, I love prop bets. Over, under, yards, catches. I love prop bets. Is this guy going to score a touchdown? I love those types of bets. I think they have a very strong place in our betting society because of fantasy sports. But we're talking about micro markets. Will there be a first pitch strike in an inning? That is so far beyond the reach of what needs to be offered by a sports book that I think they bit off more than they can chew. And I hope it's a wake-up call for sports books to pull back on some of these absurd micro markets. Or if they are going to offer them, make the limit so small, like $50, $100, that nobody's going to try to rip it off. So I think as much as obviously the bad actors deserve to be brought to justice, and I'm, very much on that side of the argument, I don't want this to be if legalized gambling wasn't here, this wouldn't happen. Please go back and look at all the gambling scandals that have taken place in this country before legalized gambling was a thing. This was a bad actor with bad intentions that figured out a way to manipulate an easily manipulated market. And he manipulated it, or she. I don't know, frankly, who they were just named as Better 1 and Better 2 or Better A and Better B. I don't even know if they're man or woman. But the point being, this is not an issue of legalized gambling. This is an issue of what is being offered by the sports books. We need to do a better job of regulating the offerings. You don't need individual pitch markets. It's not necessary. We're way over our ski, right? We're overindulging in the sports betting world. Moderation is key. You can offer Emmanuel Classe props. You can offer baseball props, but offer the regular normal props. Over under strikeouts, over under outs, walks, hits. You don't need individual pitches. These individual micro markets, if someone could find a way to manipulate them, they will. Because bad actors do bad actor things. So a weird week in the gambling and America relationship. And I'm sure the national media will chime in. Hopefully I'll get to do some more ABC segments at some point next week if they keep having scandals like this. But interesting stuff. And I am I'm bearish on the sports gambling outlook in America in terms of what might be coming down the pipe. I think prediction markets are very fun. I think they're going to offer a nice changeup. I think they're the future, but I think there's going to be a lot of pushback and a lot of regulation. And I think the more scandals you see, it'll give the national media more of an opportunity, an opening for there to be lobbying against sports betting. Why? Because politics are politics, right? You've got two sides of the aisle. I don't understand why legalized gambling should even be talked about as a potential issue in this country. Every time someone dies or gets into an accident, commits bodily harm from a DUI, I don't hear the national media crying about eliminating booze. It's because we have freedom in this country. We also have responsibility and accountability, everything in moderation. You can drink, but if you drink over the limit and you drive, you're going to get arrested. You're going to hurt someone. And if you do, it's not the booze that's the blame. It's the person that is committing the act that is to blame here. So let's keep our eye on the ball. If the national media starts to spin these, gambling's to blame, just ignore it. It's fodder, it's clickbait, and it's not baked in reality. Because the reality is legalized gambling is what helped catch the criminals in the first place. So more legalization, more regulation, and that will hopefully keep people on the straight and narrow. But let's get rid of the micro markets, please. We don't need first pitch of an inning bets. It's so not necessary, and it's just going to open up Pandora's box. Speaking of Pandora's box, the college football coaching carousel is freaking nuts. So the buyout money per Front Office Sports, I saw this article last week, $185 million in buyout money. Last year it was $35 million, obviously significantly lower. That was a low year, right? There were no coaches fired in the SEC last year, which was kind of unique. The average over the last decade is about $82 million. So again, last year was a down year for coaching firings, but this year is more than double what we're used to. It has been a dangerous season if you're a head football coach in college football. Speaking of danger, I'm going to reveal this to you now on this podcast. I've only mentioned this on a couple of other shows, so I don't want to say it's an exclusive, but it's definitely something that I believe to be true, but is not confirmed yet by any actual media outlet. I received a text message this week from a source that I trust that Eli Drinkwitz is going to be the next head coach at Penn State University. You're probably asking two questions. One, do you like that move, Jared? And I'll get to that in a minute. Two, how accurate is your source? I would say this source is better than a coin flip in terms of what I trust and how much I believe it to be true. Is it 100%? Of course, nothing is. This is one of those situations where I think there is a deal in place, and I think they're just waiting for the ink to dry, for some T's to get crossed and some I's to dot. And I think Missouri's loss on Saturday, which kind of knocked them out of the college football playoff, will likely accelerate things. And I think if Missouri loses again, and they're really out of the college football playoff, I think that might be the next day it'll get announced, or the next week. I would be willing to bet that it gets announced within a week of the regular season ending. But I do believe that Eli Drinkwitz is going to be the next head coach at Penn State. Kalshi has him as the favorite right now at around 32%. I have seen some movement on it over the last 72 hours, up from about 20-ish%. I put a wager on it. I mean, I'm not just saying this out of, pulling it out of my ass. I actually put my hard-earned dollars on this at 25%, which is basically 3-1 after the fees and everything. I would still bet it as anything more than a coin flip, right? I think it's if you're getting plus money on this, I think it's better than a coin flip's chance if this is what it's going to be. I don't mind the move. I think you'll hear some people that are upset that it's not a big enough name. I get that. You're not getting Mike Elko. Why? Because he's going to be in the college football playoff, and you'd have to wait until New Year's or later to get him. And I just think, unfortunately, I don't like it, but this is the reality. The timeline of the transfer portal and the recruiting process, it's really detrimental to wait until after the New Year's to get your head coach in place. And if you wait and Elko says no, Drinkwitz and Lane Kiffin and all these other guys, they might have jobs already. And then what do you do? What if you go after your number one guys in the college football playoff and your 2, 3, and 4 are out of the playoff? You wait, 2, 3, and 4 get hired. You go after one. He says no, he wants to stay. A&M gives him a raise to stay. And then you're out of your top 4. So I think Penn State's in a tough spot, as are a lot of these other schools, right? Florida, LSU, Auburn. It's tough to wait. You're risking it if you wait until after the new year, which it's also tough to go through the motions while the team is still playing. So it's a mess. The coaching carousel, like I said on previous shows, I'll repeat it again because I think it's a great line and not enough people are giving me credit for it because I'm very vain sometimes and I like to be acknowledged for when I say funny things. But college football, the coaching search, it is the love child of ballers and billions. All about the swag, all about the money. What have you done for me lately? So I don't know how it's going to play out for all these schools. I think Penn State's going to hire Eli Drinkwitz. I think it's going to happen within the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's my prediction. I put money on it. The other schools, I think LSU wants Lane, but Ole Miss is probably going to be in the playoff. So what do? Do they wait? I think Florida's going after Summerall. John Summerall, the head coach at Tulane. But they could be in the college football playoff. They've got a couple of big games down the stretch. And then James Franklin, I would imagine, is going to get a job at one of these schools. Auburn makes the most sense. We talked about that on last week's show. He is not going to the college football playoff. You could hire him tomorrow and he would come. So he might be the first coach that gets hired in this process because he has no current responsibilities, unless it's, a complete wild card like a John Gruden. I've heard rumblings on him to Arkansas. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm not an insider, guys. I get these texts about Penn State because I'm an alum and I know people. But the other schools in the SEC, I'm completely guessing. But I do believe Eli Drinkwitz is going to be the next head coach at Penn State University. You heard it here first, unless it doesn't happen. All right, we'll wrap up college football in a bit, but let's get to the NFL because obviously that's probably why most of you are listening. Week 10. Favorites so far, right? We have a Monday night game later tonight between the Eagles and Packers. I'll get to that matchup in a bit. But the favorites go 6-7 against the spread, hitting it just over 52% on the year, so about break even. Overs went 7-6, so a little bit better. And that's a profitable bet this year. If you just bet every over this year, you're up a few percent ROI. hitting at about 54% this year. So the public, the chalk, still performing well. And how about this? If you had a bad early window and you just said, you know what, I'm going to parlay all the favorites and the overs in the afternoon window. There were 3 games. You would have went 6-0 and hit your parlay because it was all chalk, all overs in the afternoon window. Let's get to the individual games, and I'll breeze through these because, again, I have a couple of notes about some things, but for the most part, these are just gut reactions to all the games. We'll start Thursday night. Denver and Vegas. Obviously, that was, man, I wish I could forget that game. The Broncos won, didn't cover. Ugly-ass game. Combined 7.1 yards per play. Denver was at 3.9. Vegas was at 3.2. Geno Smith took 6 sacks. He looked injured. I think he left and came back. Like it's a disaster for the Raiders offense right now. I can't believe how bad Chip Kelly's been as the offensive coordinator for this team. Really disappointing. And Denver hasn't looked much better. It's obvious that, and I know Denver is what? I think they're 7-2. They're winning games, but no one wants to bet. For example, they're a home dog this week to Kansas City. Nobody wants to bet them in January because nobody trusts Bo Nix. We saw this at Buffalo last year. Everyone was hot to trot on Denver coming into the playoffs, and they laid an egg because I don't think Sean Payton trusts Bo Nix. He looks very gimmicky. Like it has to be like perfectly aligned in order for the play to work. There's very little improvisation and there's very little creativity in his game. It's very vanilla, and they don't ask him to do a whole lot. So it's I don't know. I don't know if he's not the right guy or if he just needs more seasoning. He's had a ton of college seasoning, but maybe he just needs more work in the NFL. But something looks off with the Broncos right now. Their defense is great. Their offensive line is great. The receivers are good. The running backs are solid, but Bo Nix is a disaster. And I don't know if you can win in the NFL if your quarterback sucks and the rest of your team's good. You just don't see that happen too often. It has to be like Ravens 2001, I think, the year that the defense was amazing and Trent Dilfer won the Super Bowl. And even Dilfer that year was a good veteran quarterback that just kind of steadied the boat. I don't even think Bo Nix is that. I think he's playing at a below average level right now. I don't think you can be an NFL success and be playing below average at quarterback. You have to be at least average at the quarterback position, preferably above average, really preferably elite, but I know there's only a handful of those guys. The early morning game on Sunday in Germany, fun game. I was on the treadmill for the second half and overtime. I run on Sunday mornings before the afternoon window, so when it's an early game, I'm on the treadmill usually for the second half of the Europe game, and this was a fun one. Indy outgained them badly, but Atlanta hung in there. I just think the Falcons are just like the most unclutched team in the NFL. They just don't have that ability to rise above the adversity at times. I think Penix looked okay. The Colts offense didn't look great besides Taylor. Honestly, Daniel Jones, you're starting to see that regression. He's got a lot of weapons around him, and he's got a really smart coach. So it's going to mask a lot of those warts. But eventually they're going to kind of rear their ugly head. And the later in the season, the more important the decisions and the mistakes become. But still a nice win for Indy. They didn't cover. I'm not going to upgrade them, but still a nice win for Indy as they go on the road. I believe they're on their bye week now. Atlanta does not have their bye week. Indy is on the bye week. Atlanta does not. They come home and they play a tough game. Who does Atlanta play next week? Come on, play a tough game against Carolina. That's tough to come back and have to play a divisional game. All right, Giants and Bears, weird game. I was on the under here. Giants looked okay until Russ came in, right? Jackson Dart concussed himself, basically running into a brick wall. Like, that dude just plays so reckless at the quarterback position. You knew the injury was going to happen eventually. The Bears were outgained barely, but they were a plus 12% net success rate. They won the turnover margin. They sacked Dart a bunch of times, and they held the Giants to 1 for 4 in the red zone. I thought the Bears deserved to win the game, but not a very sexy performance. And Chicago still kind of hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They've got 6 wins, but I'd be willing to bet that they were outplayed in 4 or 5 of those wins. The stinker of the day happened in South Beach, where the Buffalo Bills had a bad case of the South Beach flu. We talk about this a lot in basketball when teams come into Miami and play the Heat. It happens in New York when teams come into New York to play the Nets or the Knicks. You're out partying the night before the game usually. You're in New York City. You're in Miami. It's fun, right? Especially the players from Indiana, or Buffalo that are coming down to South Beach for the week. Obviously they're going to be excited, and they're going to be maybe a little more frivolous than they normally would be if they were just going to go play the Colts in Indianapolis, or the Cowboys in Dallas or something like that. It's just I think you see these teams that clearly don't have their full capacity, and the Bills looked awful against the Dolphins. Miami gained 7 yards per play. Buffalo turned it over 3 times. Josh Allen took 3 sacks. Buffalo only reached the red zone once, and they did not score a touchdown. There's a chance the Bills don't win the AFC East. There really is. I cannot believe that we're at this point. But that's where we're at. We'll get to the Pats in a little bit. But, man, Buffalo looked bad. Really, really bad. And they've got a spicy game next week against Tampa, who's also coming off a loss. So we'll see. The Bills might not be very good this year. Defensively, offensively, they might just be an average team with an elite quarterback. And if that's the case, then they're probably a one and done in the playoffs. Maybe they win one game, make it to the divisional round, but I don't see the Bills right now as a AFC Championship Final Four caliber type of team, not at the level that they're playing now, even with Josh Allen at quarterback. Ravens, ho-hum, over the Vikings, covered on the road. Not a elite performance, only 4.9 yards per play, but they were plus 9% net success rate. What that tells me is they had the ball for a lot of success. They had a lot of success, but they didn't have a lot of sustained success. It was kind of sputter, spit. The reason they won the game and covered is because they were plus 3 turnover margin, but they were 2 for 5 in the red zone. You give Minnesota credit. They stood firm. The Ravens were driving it, and then they just, failed in the red zone. It was a lot of field goals. So I upgraded Baltimore because I think you have to keep giving this momentum thing, right? Now they're 4-5 with Lamar. And I'll be honest, Lamar Jackson, guys, is a dark horse MVP candidate. I know that sounds crazy. He's at 25-1 right now. So the next 5 games, Baltimore plays the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Bengals. I mean, they're probably going to go 5-0, and they're going to be 9-5 if they do. And then they'll get a home game against the Pats the week before Christmas. I mean, that game, I'm assuming that game will be flexed, but that game is going to be awesome. If it's 9-5 New England against like 10-3, 11-3, 10-4, I don't know how many games they'll play at that point. I'm assuming they'll be already had their bye. New England, that'll be a massive game. And listen, guys, there's a chance if the Ravens run the table, Lamar will be 11-3 as the starter this year, and it'll be, I think, 10-0 down the stretch. I think they won one game with him before he got hurt. I might be off there, but he is a dark horse MVP candidate. And I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. There's other guys that are more deserving this year. Maybe, but the recency bias matters. If the Ravens run the table the back half of the year, hard not to say Lamar is not the reason why, because they looked awful the first 6 weeks, and they did win one game without him, but they looked really bad in those other 2 losses without him. But keep an eye on that. I'll be honest, if you had a free bet, if you had a no risk kind of wager available in your account, 25-1 on Lamar to win the MVP, you can make worse bets. I think they're going to go 5-0 over the next 5 weeks, and I think there's going to be a huge game. New England, Baltimore, week before Christmas. Mark that one on your calendar. Cleveland at the Jets. How about the Jets? Of course, the Jets make winning plays on special teams in a game that they are probably better off losing. That's classic Jets. They had a 26% success rate in the game and won by touchdown. Gained 3.5 yards per play. Ugly, ugly game. But Dylan Gabriel was worse. He took 6 sacks. I think Cleveland is not the worst team in the NFL. I think the Jets, Cleveland, New Orleans, Tennessee, I think those are your 4 worst. You split hairs on who's worse depending on which week and what bounce of the ball they get. But I think those 4 teams pretty solid bottom 4 right now. And the Jets really, frankly, didn't need to win that game because now they're probably not going to get the number 1 pick. But who knows? Cleveland might reel off a couple wins down the stretch. We'll see. Still a lot of season left to go, but a really ugly game between the Browns and the Jets. All right, let's get to what I thought was one of the most exciting games of the day. New England at Tampa. New England with an impressive win. I was on Tampa. I was wrong about the opinion of the game, but this was the day that I finally, not finally, because about a month ago I said Drake May is going to be the MVP runner-up on this show. I said Drake May is going to be the MVP runner-up on this show. I think it was the first show that we did a month ago. He might win it, honestly. Watching what I'm watching, he is making plays, man. New England gained 7.5 yards per play on the road against a good defense, bad field conditions. They had the one turnover that almost kind of cost them there, but for the most part, Drake May was much cleaner in this game than he was in prior games. Only took one sack. They only had 5 penalties. They were a minus 11% net success rate. So what that tells me is Tampa had some sustained success against that New England defense, and New England maybe was fortunate to win the game in a sense. But make no mistake, Drake May's legit, people. He outplayed Baker, and besides the one mistake in the red zone, right? He threw that red zone pick. He played almost a perfect game. Just making throws all over the yard, airing it out, making plays with his legs, instinctual plays, leaving the pocket on third down, finding the receiver, not dropping his eyes and panicking. I mean, he's showing you his true ceiling. It's really impressive what Drake May is doing. Their schedule over the next 3 games, it's a cupcake, guys. Jets, Bengals, Giants. That's why he's now the MVP favorite. Now, would I be betting him as the MVP favorite? No, of course not. First of all, these markets are very reactive. He obviously had the most impressive performance of the day by a quarterback, so the market's going to react. Also, Josh Allen lost, so it was like a double-edged sword, where the favorite lost in an upset, and the underdog, who's the upstart, won and looked damn good doing it. I don't think Drake May deserves to be the MVP favorite right now. I think you can maybe put him in a tie with a Stafford or an Allen or a Mahomes, but I still think he has a little bit of polish left to clean up on his game. Now, the reason he is the MVP favorite is because they're winning, despite the fact that he's holding on for a little bit too long, he's taking too many sacks, and he's making some ill-advised decisions. It's rare for a second-year player to get the benefit of the doubt. Usually Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes get the benefit of the doubt in terms of the market dynamics. Like even if they have an average game, they won't drop in the market because their name is Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. The fact that Drake May is, making mistakes and still ascending to the level that he is tells me that there's legit steam in the market for him. I just wouldn't make the bet right now. I just think they're gonna drop a game at some point. I think this is his peak value. Whereas if Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, Stafford, even Sam Darnold continue to win games, those guys have been around a lot longer, and they drive the narrative a lot stronger. And this is an award voted by the media. Like it or not, it is not a statistical-driven award. If you win games and you play quarterback, you've got a chance to win it. But at the end of the day, it's still voted on by the media. And Drake May, I don't know if he's been in the league long enough to win MVP. I know that sounds crazy, but it's I don't know if there's ever been a second-year player that's won. It's actually a good question. Let me see if I can look that up. Who is the young or least tenured player to win NFL MVP? Let's see if AI can find this for us. Jim Brown. Yeah, that was the only. He did it his rookie year. We're in a very different world than 1957 when Jim Brown won NFL MVP. It just doesn't happen very often that a guy with that little tenure wins MVP. We'll see. Maybe Drake May. Maybe they've got some voodoo magic. I love McDaniels and Vrabel this year. They're fantastic. That synergy looks really strong. But I don't know. I think they've got to have like a 15-2, 14-3 kind of year in order for that to happen. And maybe they can do it with their schedule, but I don't know. I'm still a little skeptical, and I think we've reached peak market value with Drake May. I would not bet him to win MVP. I would bet Lamar at 25-1 to win MVP, or Sam Darnold, frankly. And we'll get to the Seahawks in a little bit. Terrible performance by Carolina at home. They're usually pretty good at home, but they got their butts kicked by New Orleans. The Saints were plus 2.3 net yards per play, and Bryce Young was terrible. We'll get to him a little later in the show in Rise and Wine, but goodness gracious, that was an ugly, ugly performance by Carolina. Coming off the win at Green Bay, and then you lay an egg at home against New Orleans. This is why the NFL is the best, but also the worst and the most difficult to predict. Speaking of difficult to predict, good luck trying to figure out the Jacksonville-Houston game. Houston won. They were a slight underdog. If you bet Jacksonville plus 1.5 early in the week and you lost on that thick 6 on the last play of the game, I'm sorry. Take a lap. That is unfortunate. Houston, though, deserved to win the game. Plus 2.1 net yards per play, plus 11% net success rate. Davis Mills was great in the second half. And they held Jacksonville out of the red zone for the most part, 2 for 4. And they sacked Trevor Lawrence 5 times. Really good job by the defense in the second half after, getting off to a slow start. All right, Sam Darnold, man, Seattle just keeps winning games, bro. Dominant performance over Arizona, dominated yards per play, dominated success rate. Lost the turnover battle. Again, that's the one bugaboo for Sam Darnold right now. He's still a little sloppy with the ball, but he's also playing at an MVP level. And there's a game next week as the Rams also beat the Niners, even though the Niners outgained them with some garbage time yards, plus 2 turnover margin for the Rams. Like, that's the game next week. Rams hosting the Seahawks. The winner of that game, I think, is in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I think that quarterback, that's the take that I have about the MVP. I think you should handicap that Rams-Seahawks game next week. And if you think the Seahawks are going to win, you should bet Darnold to win MVP. I gave him out at 20-1 last Sunday night. He's down to 8-1 now. I still think there's value there. I think if they beat the Rams next week, I think he might be the favorite, or tied with Drake May in terms of the favorite status. Because, man, Seattle, if you're the number 1 seed in the NFC, you've got a really strong case that quarterback deserves to be the MVP. Honestly, I think it's the tougher conference this year. It's the deeper conference for sure. And I think the NFC, man, that NFC West is a freaking gauntlet. Detroit, 44-22 over Washington. How about this? We had in the afternoon window, we had 2 games land 44-22. The same week as the most powerful full moon in a decade. That's spirituality right there. That's synchronicity at its finest. The Lions belt to ass, 8 yards per play, plus 14% net success rate. That was the widest of the week. And how about Dan Campbell taking over play calling? I thought that was an interesting move. It's not like the Lions were losing and they needed to spark the team. I just think he knows his team so well. He wanted to be a little bit more involved. And I trust him, man. I think Dan Campbell's one of the best head coaches in the league. And he was supposed to be not an offensive genius, that's for sure. And if he starts calling plays and the Lions can play at that level, I know it was the Commanders, but, man, that was a damn impressive performance for a Lions team that kind of needed one, right? Now, I think they're 9-0 off the loss since 2023. So, again, cheers, Dan Campbell, man. That was a ballsy call to take over play calling duties, and it certainly paid off. Sunday night game was really one-sided. The Chargers dominated the Steelers. Pittsburgh looks kind of Rodgers. I don't know. I think we're starting to see the drop off. Maybe physically, he's not bouncing back as strong every week, but it feels like he hasn't really played an elite game in a few weeks. So I know they beat the Colts last week, but when you turn it over 6 times, I think that was the reason they won that game. And tonight they were -3 in the turnover margin. So they're really relying on the turnovers, and when they go against them, really tough to overcome. All right, quick look ahead to next week. I've already done some work on next week's games. The Jets-Patriots on Thursday night. Let's see what I make these games here. Jets-Patriots on Thursday night. I make it 14.5. I think it's 10-ish. Yeah, 10.5. Yeah, I know laying points is not ideal on a Thursday night, but the Patriots look really good right now. And this will be Aaron Glenn's first Thursday night game on the road. And I think there's a really good stat out there that says Thursday night teams, rookie head coaches coaching their first Thursday night games typically struggle. So you might be hesitant to lay it this week, but that's really the only way you can look there. Washington, Miami. I make it 5.5. It is 2.5. I'm probably a little bit lower on Washington with Mariota. I would probably bet Miami under a field goal. I would. I didn't like anything I saw from Washington last week. Miami looks like they're playing hard. Listen, I don't care how bad Buffalo looks. That's still a damn good Bills team. And they pummeled them. So maybe the Dolphins have a little fight left in them. Carolina, Atlanta, I make the Falcons a 2.5-point favorite. It's 3.5. So, yeah, I would probably take the points with Carolina there. Tampa Bay, Buffalo, I make it 6.5. It's 5.5. I probably wouldn't do much with that. Buffalo, of course, both of those teams, frankly, desperate for a win. I would probably bet the over in that game. I think Tampa Bay and Buffalo are going to come out swinging. And I feel like that over will probably climb throughout the week. It's 49.5. Houston at Tennessee, I make it 9.5. It's 7.5. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do much there. Obviously, the Texans, you would expect C.J. Stroud back. If you think C.J. Stroud's coming back, I see a 7 right now. Again, recording this on a Sunday night. If you think C.J. Stroud is coming back, I probably would bet Houston. It's a concussion, who knows? But if you think he's coming back, if you have any news that he's coming back, I think I'd bet Houston there, especially if you can get a 7. Chicago, Minnesota, I basically make it a pick. It's Minnesota -3. Man, all those, wow. Minnesota got bet up pretty hard. I don't know how you can lay with J.J. McCarthy. That's tough. But the Bears look like they're begging to drop a game. The Bears have been hanging on by a thread the last few weeks, man. That is the market sending you a clear memo that they do not trust Caleb Williams in that environment against a blitzing Brian Flores defense. The fact that Minnesota is a favorite against a 6-win Bears team, that is very telling in the market right there. That is a stinky line because I've got Chicago rated ahead of Minnesota. I think a lot of people probably do, unless you're really a believer in J.J. McCarthy, which I'm not. Green Bay at the Giants, I'm going to leave that one open because Green Bay plays on Monday night. But right now, it looks like that line is 8.5. I haven't done much with Green Bay yet because, of course, they play tomorrow, or play today. But if I was going to make the line, it would be about 8.5 if it was using the current ratings before Green Bay plays their Monday night game. So not much there. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, I make the game 8.5. It's 5.5. Yeah, I would probably look to Pittsburgh here, even though they haven't looked great. Really tough to bet Cincy. Really is. Even though I'm really dropping them in my ratings because of their defense. Jags and the Chargers, I make the Chargers a 2.5-point road favorite. It is 2.5, so I'm not going to do anything there. Rams and Seahawks, I make it 3.5. It's 2.5. I probably would bet the Rams at under a field goal. Yeah, I think they're playing the best football of any team right now in the NFL. I do. Stafford looks like an MVP. I think they win that game. I'd love it if Seattle won because I've got a 20-1 Darnold ticket. Maybe that's how I come off of it. Maybe I take a little Stafford MVP. That's what wins an MVP. The narrative of Matthew Stafford. Stafford, I think he did win one MVP with the Lions. I might be wrong about that. Let me look. Stafford MVP. Has he ever won an MVP? No. He's never won the MVP. Yeah. I'll be honest. That's my pick right now. I'm not saying I'm running to the window because I think he's basically a co-favorite right now with Drake May. Let's take a look. I think that if you were going to ask me what narrative makes the most sense that a voter would latch onto, is it Drake May in his second year with a historically bad schedule in a bad division with the favorite in that division having a significantly worse season than expected? Or is it the 30, what is it, Stafford 40? However old he is. He's been in the league a million years. He's been one of the toughest, most consistent, best quarterbacks in the sport during his entire career. He's never won an MVP. If they get the number one seed in the NFC, in the toughest division in the league, he's got to be the MVP. I think I will go on a limb today. It is November 10th when you're listening to this, the year of our Lord, 2025. The team that has the number one seed in the NFC, that quarterback will win MVP. And if the Rams beat the Seahawks this week, they're in the driver's seat for that. They are absolutely in the driver's seat. Let's look at the Rams' schedule over the next few weeks. If they beat the Seahawks, then that's a tough 1-2 punch. Seahawks and Bucks, both at home, but still, two tough games back-to-back. Then it's Panthers, Cardinals, Lions, Seahawks, Falcons, Cardinals. So they get to play the Cardinals twice and the Falcons over the last 6 weeks of the year. And the Panthers. Yeah. If Stafford can win those next two games, I think he's going to be the MVP. If they beat Seattle and Tampa, Darnold and Baker, who are the two other MVP quarterbacks in the NFC right now that are kind of contending, yeah, I think I think Stafford's my MVP, guys. That's who I would vote for. That narrative makes a lot more sense than Drake May, considering the tenure that Matthew Stafford has in the NFL. Arizona, San Francisco. I make the game basically a pick 'em. It's the Niners minus 2.5. Probably wouldn't do a ton there. I heard after the game, Shanahan said Purdy's looking better. If you think Purdy's going to play, then maybe you bet San Francisco with the thought that that game gets to 3. Arizona, I think the Brissett thing was, I think he's going to start for the next few weeks, and he's probably going to struggle and look average, and then they'll bring back Kyler Murray, and that'll be, the spark for them, and we'll see how that plays out. But Arizona kind of looks like a team that's, got a hole in the boat, and it's filling up more than you could empty it out. Baltimore, Cleveland, I make it 12.5. It's 8.5. Man, I don't see the love for Cleveland there. I am very down on Cleveland. I think Baltimore is ascending. Do not look at their low point total or lack of dominance today against Minnesota as a reason to not back them. And I know that the road favorite model doesn't always go well, but man, I think Baltimore is due for a breakout, big 40, 50-point game real soon to show you that they're officially back. Baltimore's a legit team, guys. Don't let the win-loss record fool you. They are a legit team with a good, smart offensive coordinator who I think is going to get things right down the stretch in the second half. Kansas City, Denver, I make it 3.5. It's 4. I like Kansas City there. My guess is it goes up throughout the week, and people will bet Kansas City after the Denver flop last week. Of course, the Chiefs coming off the bye. We know all the Andy Reid off the bye stuff. But the Broncos are off the mini bye. The game's in Denver. I think the Chiefs win. Screw the line. The Chiefs are winning that game. Are they covering? Maybe not, but they're winning that game. Detroit, Philly. Obviously, I have Philly's ratings undecided after this week, but if I kept their rating the same, I'd make it a pick 'em, and it's basically a pick 'em. So I probably wouldn't do much there. And in Dallas, Vegas on Monday night here in Sin City, I make the game Dallas minus 1.5. It's minus 3.5. I think we're a little stretched on Dallas there. I like fading the Raiders as much as anyone else, but let's be honest. The Cowboys defense sucks. So laying more than a field goal on the road with that Cowboys defense feels like you're asking for trouble. I would probably be on the Raiders on that side, and my guess is those hooks will get bet up before we get to Monday night. All right, that is my NFL recap for Week 10. Again, I would say the plays that I'm looking to bet early in the week, I kind of like that over in Tampa Bay Buffalo. As long as there's no weather in Buffalo to deal with next Sunday, I think I'm going to be on that over. I think the market's painting a very clear picture with Minnesota. The fact that they're a 3-point favorite against the Chicago team that I think they're rated below. I think that's telling you how the market feels about the Bears. And I might have to take 3.5 with Vegas on Monday night, especially if I think those hooks are going to go bye-bye. I'll probably be on Baltimore teasers too. Get Baltimore through both keys. That's going to be a very popular teaser. Next week is the Baltimore Ravens. Also, the Lions, getting them up through both keys might be a very popular teaser. And Houston, down from both keys, especially if C.J. Stroud's coming back. I could see the Texans maybe building off that momentum. The Titans suck, guys. I don't care that they're coming off the bye. When bad teams come off the bye, it doesn't always go well because it's all about what happens during the bye week. And I can't imagine Tennessee is very locked in right now. All right, that finishes up the NFL recap for Week 10. Let's get to the college football playoff. Wild weekend. So I'll just give you my predictions now, and then we'll get into how I feel about the games coming up this week. I have Ohio State 1, obviously. Indiana 2, A&M 3, Bama 4, Georgia 5, Ole Miss 6, Oregon 7, Texas Tech 8. I have Vandy 9th, and I know Vandy lost to Texas, and there's still a lot of season left to go, but I'm still doing the thing where I'm spinning this forward. And I think Vandy's going to get in over Texas and Oklahoma because I think Texas and Oklahoma are both going to lose this week. Texas is at Georgia. Oklahoma plays Bama. And I think Vandy's going to have a good chance to beat Tennessee that last week of the year. So, again, the top 4, I'm kind of using it as the benchmark of this is how I think the committee's going to vote. But the at-large bids, I really think Vandy's going to get in, guys. They're not going to be in the top 12 this week, obviously. But I think Texas and Georgia, or Texas and Bama, or excuse me, goodness gracious. I think Texas is going to lose to Georgia, and I think Oklahoma is going to lose to Bama. So What's going to happen next week? I've got Notre Dame in at 10. The committee made it, right? We talked about this on last week's show. The committee made a very clear statement putting Notre Dame as the highest two-loss team. That is telling me Notre Dame's going to the playoff if they win out. That's what that's telling me. Now, can a team like Texas or Oklahoma jump Notre Dame if they go on the road and beat Georgia? Sure, but let's let that happen first, because I don't think that's going to happen. If that happens, then we'll obviously change things. But as constructed right now, considering Texas a dog, 7-point dog at Georgia this week, Oklahoma's a 7.5-point dog at Bama, I don't see those teams winning, especially not Texas. Texas got a real uphill battle, and their defense doesn't look good. So that's a big over game for me, Texas at Georgia this week. I've got Georgia Tech as my ACC champion. Good luck trying to figure out the ACC. I have no freaking idea who's winning that conference. Absolutely no idea. Don't care. Whoever it is going to get blown out in the first round probably. And then USF is my group of 5. I'll get to their big game in a minute, but my national championship, Bama over Ohio State. 7 straight week I've had Bama winning it. 6 straight week I've had them beating Ohio State. The rest of the country is pure chaos. I think those two teams right now immune to the slip-ups. Honestly, I think those are the 2 best teams in the country right now, at least for now. I reserve the right to change my mind after another data point next week. Again, the ACC is a mess. Top 2 teams, Virginia and Louisville, both lose as outright home favorites. Woof. Chandler Moore's injury, very concerning for UVA. Could wreck their year. And keep an eye on that before their game this week against Duke, which has really lost a lot of luster after both Duke and Virginia lost this week. But good call on us taking UConn plus the points on Saturday. It would be really ironic if Miami and Georgia Tech ended up playing in this ACC championship game after all the craziness. I think those are the 2 best teams in the ACC, Miami and Georgia Tech. But because of all the chaos and the, backstabbing that's going on in that league with everyone just beating up on each other, I don't know if they're going to play. It's a 1-bid league, though, for sure. Whoever wins the ACC championship game, that will be the only team in the college football playoff. Big 12 also looks like a 1-bid league. BYU got stuffed into a locker. That is the BYU that we've expected for the last few weeks. Texas Tech looks legit. Red Raiders, I think, are the class of that conference. They will be heavily favored in their final 2 regular season games against UCF and West Virginia. I guess I can see a path to Texas Tech losing the Big 12 championship game and whoever wins getting into the college football playoff. And Texas Tech still getting in as an at-large? I don't know. Might not happen. I don't know. You put it. That's the debate, right? What if you have a 3-loss SEC team against a 2-loss Texas Tech? The Big 12 is so much worse than the SEC. It's hard not to say that the 3 losses in the SEC that team's not better. I guess it would be case by case. What are the teams? What are the losses? I need more context, but that's going to be a tough argument. I don't know if the Big 12, Texas Tech, will win that argument. I think the only way that the Texas Tech team or any team from the Big 12 gets into the college football playoff is through their automatic berth. I just don't see a second team getting in. I've got 4 SEC at larges: A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vandy. 2 in the Big 10, Indiana, Oregon, and I've got Notre Dame as my independent. Those are your 7 at-larges in the college football playoff. Big games this week. Obviously, we mentioned the Bama game hosting Oklahoma. Elimination game for OU with John Mateer. You would imagine 1 week healthier, but I'll be honest, guys, based on what I've watched and that thumb injury, I think it's more than a week-to-week thing. I think he's going to need the whole offseason to heal. He had thumb surgery on his throwing thumb like a month and a half ago. It's just, I don't see it being 100% before the end of the regular season. I think Bama takes care of business here. Do I think they cover? Maybe. They haven't been as aggressive with covering. I think they just know they need to just win games. And I'll be honest, I mean, if Ty Simpson goes undefeated in the SEC, how does he not win the Heisman? We'll get to that in a little bit. Texas at Georgia. Elimination game for Texas off the bye. Georgia finally got a little bit of style points over the weekend. Really beat up on Mississippi State, who's not any good, but still, you go on the road in the SEC and you win. It's impressive. I actually like what I've seen from Arch Manning over the last few weeks. He looks like he's calmed down a bit in the pocket. But you know what I don't like is this Longhorns defense, which might be a little overrated. Georgia's defense has been bad all year, too. This game's got shootout vibes between Texas and Georgia. What's the total in this game? I actually didn't look. I should have looked. Total in this game is 47.5. Yeah, I'm betting the over between Texas and Georgia. Iowa at USC. The Trojans still have an outside shot to make the college football playoff. They probably need to finish 10-2, which means they need to win this week and they need to beat Oregon next week. I don't know if that game's next week, but it's soon. And that's going to be tough. But let's be honest, the Ducks didn't look dominant on Saturday against Iowa. They were dealing with some injuries. We'll see how healthy Oregon is for that game. But that'll be a fun game, USC at Oregon in a couple weeks. Actually, I don't know where that game is. Let me look. But that, obviously, USC has to take care of business first this week. I think they're going to have an easier time scoring on Iowa than Oregon did at home. That game's in 2 weeks. It's on November 22nd. It is at Oregon, at Autzen Stadium. It'll be a huge game. If USC takes care of business this week, they're a touchdown home favorite. That game in 2 weeks, USC at Oregon, it'll have Pac-12 feel in a Big Ten rivalry. It'll be a lot of fun. I mentioned the group of five, USF at Navy this week. Winner of that game will have a clear path to the American title game, where they will likely play Tulane or North Texas. You got to keep an eye on the Blake Horvath injury. But I'll be honest, the backup quarterback for Navy, Braxton Woodson, man, he looked good at times against Notre Dame. Obviously, an uphill battle, but that dude can run. He's like 6'3", 220. Where'd Navy find him? That's a dude right there. I want him on the front lines defending our country. Salute the troops. But Braxton Woodson, I don't know if we'll start this week. Horvath missed the Notre Dame game, but keep an eye on that this week. USF, though, big road favorite. I imagine they'll take care of business no matter who's under center, and I think it'll be USF against probably North Texas in the American title game, with the winner getting a potential college football playoff berth. Speaking of potential college football playoff berths, Notre Dame's last true test at Pittsburgh. I think that's where game day is going to be this week. They're a double-digit favorite. I think they'll take care of business. I would keep betting the Jeremiah Love rushing props. It didn't cash for us on Saturday, but I think he looks like he's the man in college football right now. Probably the best player in the sport. All right, let's get to the Heisman. I'll be honest, guys. My soul left my body on Saturday with that Indiana-Penn State finish. I really thought Penn State was going to pull that off. They deserved it. They played their asses off, but cheers to Fernando Mendoza. I mean, goodness gracious. That's one of the best drives, one of the best throws I've seen in a long time. One of the best catches for sure. I don't know about the throw. Like, he was kind of just like heaving it up. The catch was insane. Absolutely insane. And Indiana, they keep sleeping with angels, man. They played two really tough games this year against Iowa and Penn State, both on the road. And they figured out a way to win both of them, even though they were behind in the fourth quarter in both of them. And I don't know if they're good enough to beat Ohio State, but they'll give them a game. They'll give them a game. Ironically enough, the Oregon win was one of their easier wins of the year. I thought that was going to be one of the tougher games that they played. But actually one of their easier wins when you look at it in perspective to last week against Penn State and against Iowa a few weeks ago. Of their three really tough games this year that we expected, the Oregon game went the easiest. So crazy there. But the college football is nuts, man. Mendoza and Sane right now are the co-favorites. I think you split a hair with them. Remember, this award is going to be handed out before the Big Ten championship game. The ceremony takes place actually Saturday, December 3rd, December 13th. Maybe it's after. No, the finalists are announced on Monday the 8th. Is the conference championship game? Hold on a minute. This actually would change my mind on how I view this. No, it's later this year. So the Army-Navy game, hold on. Wow. So the finalists are announced the Monday after championship weekend. So the championship games are going to count. Let me see. When will Heisman votes due? Wow. So I feel like that's a change from prior years. I don't know. I might be wrong on that. But I do know this is actually important information. The Heisman voting deadline is Monday, December 8th. That is after conference championship weekend. So Julian Sane, Fernando Mendoza, and Ty Simpson, and Marcel Reed, frankly, are going to have a chance. Like, it's going to be one of those four guys. I feel pretty confident now. Those guys are all going to have a chance to prove it on championship weekend before the votes are due. Wow. Does it change my opinion on the race? No. If Ty Simpson goes undefeated in the SEC and wins the SEC championship game, how do you not give him the Heisman? And I know what you're thinking. Say and Mendoza, they're both undefeated. Well, one of them's going to lose. So one of them will not be undefeated. So betting on Mendoza at plus 175 when he's going to be a dog in the game to Ohio State makes no sense. It makes no sense. Just bet Indiana to win the game. Because if Indiana loses the Big Ten championship game, there's no shot Mendoza is going to be the Heisman. And he's being priced right now plus 175, which is, 20, 30 cents off from what the Indiana money line is going to be in the game. And then you remove all doubt. Just bet Indiana money line in the Big Ten championship game. If they win, you win. If they lose, you lose. If they lose, you're losing the Heisman bet anyways. So, and if they win, they still might give it to Ty Simpson because he went undefeated in the SEC. So you cannot bet Mendoza right now. I understand betting Sayin because he'll be favored in the Big Ten championship game. I understand betting Ty Simpson at plus 550. I really understand that. Bama's going to be a favorite the rest of the season. And they're going to be favored in the SEC championship game. And again, I'll say it for the third time on this show. If Ty Simpson goes undefeated in the SEC, 8-0, and wins the SEC championship game, how do you not give him the Heisman? In the toughest conference in America, with a gajillion ranked wins. They would have had 6 ranked wins if they win the SEC championship game. He's already got 4 under his belt. They play Oklahoma this week, and then they play the SEC title. I don't understand how that is not good enough to win the Heisman. Unless there's a dual threat Travis Hunter type player, which there's not this year. To me, that success, that level of team success is worth something in this race because the quarterback is the most important position on the field, and Ty Simpson, right now, in my opinion, is playing it at the highest level. He's not the favorite, but I think he's the best quarterback in college football. I will beat that drum until it's dead. I understand Sayin and Mendoza have had fantastic years. I'm not taking anything away from them. But if you go undefeated in the SEC and win the SEC championship game, I do not understand how that quarterback, who is obviously playing it at a super high level to begin with, does not get bonus points for the Heisman race. Crazy. Whew. Rant over on the Heisman. All right, let's move on to the end of the show. 2 things we always do. Rise and Wine, Morning Glory. My favorite segments. All right, Rise and Wine. Bryce Young, goodness gracious. Badly outplayed by Tyler Shuck at home today. Bryce, you can't get outplayed at home by Tyler Shuck the week after you beat the Packers. It's a terrible look, bud. This year, Bryce is 33rd out of 34 qualifiers in yards per attempt. Only Dylan Gabriel, Mr. Checkdown Charlie himself, has a shorter yards per attempt than Bryce Young this year. 29th in EPA per dropback. This is year 3 of the Bryce Young experiment. So, very important decision for Carolina in the offseason and how they handle this 5th-year option. He will become an unrestricted free agent, of course, in 2028. What would I do if I was the Panthers? I don't want to close the book too soon on young quarterbacks because we see what is taking place with Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones. Like, sometimes you just need the right brain to unlock them. But unlike Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold, Bryce Young doesn't have necessarily the physical tools that you're looking for in the ideal world. He's a little small, a little bit light. Whereas Darnold and Jones are much bigger in stature, bigger arms, physically stronger. I'm out on Bryce. I'm out on Bryce. Just like I'm out on Bo Nix. I think I'm out on Bryce. And the Carolina Panthers just getting absolutely pushed around by New Orleans at home. They have now lost 11 straight games as a favorite. Not all of those are Bryce Young's fault. He's only been the starting quarterback for 2 of the 11. Carolina has not won a game, not just covered, won a game, period, as a favorite since 2021. Shame on you, Carolina. One of my losses in Circa today for the contest. All right, Morning Glory time. So this is this change up on the show, right? Morning Glory used to be praising something that was awesome and maybe giving you a futures bet or something, but now we are going to instead give you an actionable element that you can take with you for later in the week. And we are going to talk about Monday Night Football between the Eagles and the Packers. I'm actually really excited about this game. This is going to be a fun game. Look ahead here was Green Bay -3. And we have seen some serious action on Philly, almost down to a pick'em now. Eagles, of course, off the bye. Last we saw, they were blowing out the Giants. Packers off that stunning upset to the Panthers last week. Man, that Panthers loss is aging like milk after Carolina laid that egg against New Orleans on Sunday. Philly does feel like a team that is playing their best football in the future. I feel like the Eagles are start slow, finish strong kind of vibes for me this year, which makes sense coming off the Super Bowl. Whereas the Packers, despite the fact that they're first in explosive play rate on defense and they're top 5 on offense, like they don't feel like they have a lot of pizzazz to them right now. I'm not very excited to back a Green Bay team, even though you're getting them at a discount here based off of the trajectory that they're on. I think Jordan Love needs to start figuring things out, especially in the red zone. But really the angle here is the running game for Philly, especially the tush push. Why is that an angle here? If you forget, in the offseason, it was the Green Bay Packers that were the team who pushed to the forefront a call to ban the tush push. And I would be willing to bet that Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense are going to utilize that play multiple times in this game. Probably around the goal line and on short yardage. But who knows? Maybe they whip one out just randomly to screw with Green Bay and pick up a couple random yards on a first down. So I think there's 2 ways to play it. I think my favorite way is the Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown bet, which is actually at plus money right now. I got it at plus 115 over at BetMGM. Obviously, you can win this bet on just a run-of-the-mill rushing touchdown from Jalen Hurts, which he is prone to do. But also the tush push makes this very, very live. The other way to play it is the rushing attempts prop. I love betting rushing attempt overs for mobile quarterbacks in primetime games for 2 reasons. 1, they tend to run more in big primetime games against good teams. And 2, kneel downs count. End of the half, end of the game. If Jalen Hurts takes a knee, that counts as a rushing attempt. So I'll go over 7.5 rushing attempts for Jalen Hurts. I'll go anytime touchdown at plus money for Jalen Hurts. Your morning glory for the final game in the NFL, Monday Night Football. Should be a fun one between the Eagles and the Packers. All right, that's going to do it for episode 7 here of The Morning After. Thank you for tuning in again. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the newsletter. It's coming out. If you're listening to this and you subscribe to the newsletter, give me your feedback. Did you like getting them at the same time? Do you want to get one later than the other? Do you want the newsletter first, then the podcast second? You want the podcast first, newsletter second? I don't care. Just give me your feedback. I'm open to it. Again, this is a work in progress. I'm not set in stone with any of this. I'm building a brand, building a business. I'm trying to learn as I go. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to screw up. But that's why you, the audience, has a voice on The Morning After. I'm sorry that I didn't go live this week. Frankly, only 2 or 3 people have been watching live, so I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. And this works much better for the structure and the workflow that I'm trying to accomplish. And as we get forward into the future, the newsletter is going to become the vehicle for how I send out plays overnight. So, for example, on a big playoff weekend in the NFL in a couple months, I'm not going to necessarily do a podcast on a Friday, but I might send out a newsletter with my picks for the weekend. Same thing in bowl season, March Madness, et cetera, futures bets, things that are more evergreen. I have the newsletter vehicle now to send out plays and to send out content. I used to do it through the Discord. The Discord is becoming a chore, and I see myself, because of the immediacy of it, I can just pop a bet in there whenever. I find myself gambling more than I probably should. And this is all about moderation and playing within structure like a good quarterback does. I shouldn't be just willy-nilly throwing out bets all day long. I should be giving you my best stuff, and I should be curating it in a way where it's palatable and it's not overwhelming. And I think the Discord sometimes, even though there's over 1,200 people in there, and thank you to all of the Discord members who are supporting the podcast and the newsletter, I will continue to hopefully make this a free channel for as long as humanly possible. And I don't plan on changing putting a paywall on the Discord anytime soon. Maybe I'll monetize something else at some point, or maybe I'll get a sponsor. But the reason that I'm kind of getting away from the Discord and getting towards the newsletter is it's an easier sell for sponsors, because I can show them the click-through rate and the open, percentage, and there's a lot more palatable numbers that I could take to a sponsor and say, here's the reach you're getting. Whereas the Discord, it's just like a video game. Like, it's just a channel, and I just type stuff, and I don't have any way to track it. So that's another reason why I'm going away from the Discord and towards the newsletter. It's not that I dislike Discord. It's just, it's a lot of work, and it's not a lot of reward. So I need to work on building my brand and building my business in the smartest way possible. So that's my 2 cents on why I'm creating the newsletter and, veering slowly away from the Discord of giving out my plays. But I appreciate your time today. We will be back next week for another episode of the podcast. Maybe we'll send out another newsletter at some point this week. But I appreciate your time. The morning after Week 10 in the NFL, Episode 7. We'll talk to you next week.